Hey everybody, today I want to share with you a story about my twins when they were about 4 or 5 years old, and how my wife flipped the script on them in the situation that she was facing. So last night, it was Sunday night, and my daughter and my son, the twins, are now 17 years old. They're going into their senior year, and we all sat down and watched a funny movie together, and it just thrilled me beyond belief to see my daughter and son just giggling and laughing at just some stupid little movie we were watching. But it reminded me of the time when they were 4 or 5 years old and there was a conflict in their lives. And I'll never forget, we were sitting in the living room and the twins came down with tears in their eyes. And Chloe, at the time, my daughter, she was the spokesman for the two. Uh, my wife said, "What's going on?" And you could see they were kind of tearing up and crying. And poor little Chloe said, "Eric, that's their brother, their older brother. Eric called us morons." And she was so sad and she was teared up. And I remember my wife looking at him for just a second. Her and Jack were both teary eyed. She looked at him and they looked at her like, "What are you going to do?" Right. And my wife, Shelly, in the Shelly method, this is the Shelly method. She smiled really big and she said, "Y'all are the cutest little morons I've ever seen." And she started laughing. And immediately the twins started laughing. But that wasn't all she did. She said, "Come here for a second." And so they both ran over to her and she hugged them real tight. And she said, "We're going to do something." And they said, "What are we going to do?" And she ran over and she pulled out a worksheet that we had created in our family for conflict. Because when you have six kids, and some with special needs, there can be and some that are strong willed and spirited, there can be a lot of conflict, right? And so she set them down and she filled out this little worksheet with them. And I'll never forget just watching them light up, not from just what she was doing, but from the attention she was giving them, to deciding together, walking through and talking through how they could best manage this situation so that it didn't hurt their feelings, and so that they managed it better. And it was so cool because less than a week later, I'm not kidding you, less than a week later, the twins came downstairs, and this time I remember vividly. I was washing dishes, and they came downstairs giggling. And usually that meant they were up to something. So I said, "Why are you guys giggling? What's going on?" And Chloe, my daughter, she said, "Eric just called us morons." And they were laughing, right? And I'm thinking, holy crap. What did Shelly do? Right. And I got to thinking about how, you've probably experienced something like this in your family. If one kid calls the other kid a name, the other kid gets mad, they start fighting, maybe hitting, whatever they do, right? Then you have to get involved. Can you not just act right for a little bit? Can you not just, and then we get all upset and frustrated and discouraged. And then it causes stress and tension in our home. From that, what could have been that to my twins just walking and giggling and saying, at 5 years old, remember, Eric just called us morons, and they were giggling. And I want to suggest that's the power of the Shelly method and some of the things that Shelly and we were doing in our family. We have a little worksheet that we had created for conflict. And it absolutely, when you sit down, and mostly it was for Shelly and I, right? It wasn't for our kids necessarily. It was mostly for Shelly and I, because when we would experience frustration or anger or discouragement, we didn't want to bleed that out into our kids. And so we would try to manage ourselves better, Shelly and I, as we dealt with our strong-willed kids or the difficulties that would arise. And it helped us to set the tone. And what a great example of my wife, Shelly, using her Shelly method to set the tone and teach my twins early on that they can manage themselves and turn, flip the script and turn what might be hard things into fun things. So I just wanted to share that with you. And sitting down with my twins last night, they're 17, they're going into their senior year. It's so exciting to see them not just doing well in life, but having a lot of friends and getting along so well together, loving each other, loving hanging out together, and just a lot of laughter that we had last night. So hopefully that's helpful. We'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.